Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Really pleased to be speaking to you today about the innovation that's happening in our industry. But more importantly, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how to deal with change. I have been in technology sales and marketing for about 25 years, and 19 of those have been in media. So like many of you, I've seen a lot of change in this industry. I've seen it done very well. I've seen it done very poorly. So I'll be talking about my experience with change in this industry, and I'll also be talking about some great leaders in technology and how they have dealt with change. So just starting off, some of the major changes that we've seen in our industry writ large, a movement from owning to renting. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I have stacks and stacks and stacks of VHS tapes, mostly of Disney princesses that are in a closet somewhere. Don't know what to do with those. Same thing with DVDs. We just don't collect property anymore as we did before. And this is a societal change. It's not just with media. There's different ways of accessing an automobile, whether it's leasing, whether it's a subscription to an automobile, same thing that's happened to media. So a big change that we've seen in our industry. Another big change that we've seen is a movement from a middleman, or the MVPDs, to direct access from the programmer to the subscriber. Now, interestingly, it all started out, probably when this picture was taken, as a direct relationship between the broadcaster, who broadcast over the airwaves, to the end user. It's only been really in the last few decades that we moved to the MVPD model. But now, kind of slowly but surely, you're seeing more and more OTT channels that are being directed to subscribers themselves. In fact, I can remember Bob Iger saying just a few years ago that he had a lot of trepidation about doing this because of his large MVPD customers, but he's now got 3 OTT channels that are out there. Another big change we're seeing in media is a movement from curated content to self-curated, let's call it. We've all channel surfed on the electronic programming guide, the channels that are made available by programmers in the playlist that they present them. Now, many of us are choosing the programs that we want to watch on Netflix or Hulu or what have you. We give a great deal of care to what we're going to watch, and we sit there and watch that program, tending not to flip channels as much as we did when you had a curated list, an EPG that we would use. And last but not least, this is just beginning, there's a movement in our industry from human to AI. A lot of the jobs that are currently being done by human beings, like quality control and other things, are moving to an AI-based model. So these are, I think, some of the key changes that our industry is undergoing, and you're seeing the results of those. Now, a different way to look at change. So one of the technology leaders that is sort of part of my presentation is Jeff Bezos, who said, I frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And what Jeff Bezos says is, the more interesting question is, what's not going to change? Tell me what's going to be around in 10 years so that I know what's going to be a stable environment, and I can build a business around that. So I tried to come up with, and perhaps you have others, those things that likely will not change over the course of the next 10 years. And the first is storytelling. This is what all of you do. We are part of it in one way or another, telling stories. We've been doing this since we were cave men and women around campfires back in the day. It's sort of part of our DNA. And so when people get worried about threats to the media industry, I tell them the media industry will be here forever because the media industry is storytelling. Another thing that I don't think is going to change is community. Again, this is built into our DNA. We're social animals. We want to be around others. Even the most introverted of us want to be with others. And I think that this is one reason why social media has blown up, as well as sports. Sports is a community event. And as much as other types of programming are sort of diminishing in value, sports is increasing in value, and I think that's largely because of the community aspect of it. Value, this does not apply only to the media vertical by any stretch, this applies everywhere. People want more for less. So virtually anything you're going to design or any product you're going to release, you have to be mindful of value. As it pertains to the media industry, I talked about the fact that we have more and more OTT channels, some of which charge $3, some of which charge $9, some of which charge $16. If you add all of those up, it gets to be a pretty pricey undertaking, especially compared to the value that you get with your cable subscription. So I think that one of the things that we'll have to watch out for as more OTT channels get rolled out is what value are you getting by buying individual channels or individual groups of channels and paying for each of those. Simplicity. When the iPod came out in 2001 by Apple, there were a lot of other MP3 players. The reason the iPod took off, and this, by the way, led to the ascendance of Apple in the last couple of decades, is because of its simplicity. Do you remember the scroll wheel? You could use a thumb and you could move around to your different songs and click the middle button. That's simplicity. The more complex things are, the more difficult it is to use, the less likely it's going to be a successful product. And selection, I think this goes without saying. We all want as much choice as we possibly can get. If you think about Amazon and Jeff Bezos, where is there more selection than on Amazon? So again, these are some of the things that I think we could count on being around in the next 10 years for sure. But I would encourage you also just to think about other things. If you're looking to roll out a product, think about things that are impervious to change, as they'll be more successful in the long run. So navigating change successfully, a lot of this is from my own experience. And the first one is a challenge culture. I think it's necessary to have a challenge culture in order to execute change correctly. My mother used to say, the only stupid question is the one that goes unasked. I think, and I've seen too often, that folks are in meetings and they're not speaking up. They're not objecting, they're not saying, why are we doing this? I've come out of many a meeting and had people say, that leader's crazy if they want to do this. Well, why didn't you bring it up in the meeting when it was being discussed? And so this is hard because you've got to develop a culture where people feel that they have the freedom and the protection to raise questions without being rebuked or looked upon as stupid. There's a Chinese proverb that said, you can ask a question and look like a fool for a minute, or not ask a question and be a fool for life. So I think this is an important ingredient to navigating change, is having a challenge culture, having a bias towards action. In one of the companies I used to work for, we had a change control meeting every single week. And that's exactly what they did. They controlled change. Rather than go out and develop a minimum viable product, an MVP, that could be shown to a customer with a minimum of effort, there was a lot of talk about what we were going to do. And I think if you're going to be successful in navigating change and developing new products, you have to act quickly and with urgency. Getting caught up in the hype, I've seen this many, many times where you look at the competitor and you say, this is the way we need to go because my chief competitor is moving in this direction. I was with an organization, we spent millions and millions of dollars on encoders, rows and rows of these things. When the CTO asked the product manager, why they were doing this. It was because their chief competitor was doing it. There wasn't a real look at the financial underpinnings of what they were trying to do. So try to avoid getting caught up in hype. Collecting knowledge. It's almost impossible to predict changes that might occur. So for instance, the 90s technology bubble. No one predicted that, or very few people did, and those that did are billionaires. Same thing with the credit crisis in 2008. So it's really important, and I think this is probably in the obvious category, to collect as much information as you can so that you can be as prepared as you possibly can for the eventuality of change. But the more important piece than collecting knowledge is collecting knowledgeable people. One of the bars that I have in hiring anyone is I want to hire someone that I would work for. That's it. If there is someone that I'm interviewing that I don't think I could work for, I would not hire them. And I had someone, we used to have team interviews, say, Gerry, that person's going to give you a run for your money. Why are you looking at that person? And I responded, I want to be given a run for my money. I want someone to be pulling me up the hill, not me having to pull them up the hill. And so it's really, really important because we as individuals can only do so much, the smartest of us, in collecting information. We need to hire smart people and let them run. Let them do what they can do. What's next? Because of change and how quickly it's happening, when we develop a product, we need to be sure that we have something in the pipeline. What is next? Because that product may look good in the early stages, but it could fail. And if it does, you want to have a plan for that eventuality. And finally, facing failure, and I will admit I did take this directly from Jeff Bezos. He has stated that he has spent hundreds of billions of dollars on failed projects. And what he says, though, is that it's very, very important to admit failure and move on. So many times we hold on to a project either because we've invested a lot of time and energy or money, and it languishes without ever turning around. And what you're doing is you're preventing yourself from working on other more successful products. A case in point, I think, might be when Amazon was looking to move into New York. There was a lot of political static because of that move, for good or for ill. And Amazon turned around and said, nope, thank you, I'm moving on. And I thought, that's Jeff Bezos. That's his style. And who knows what he's going to do after that. So these are some of the things that I aspire to in kind of navigating through change. I think each of them are important. I think it's worthwhile to take a look at these and sort of think on your own what, through your experience, you would do to navigate it. So who Globecast is. Now it's kind of a little bit commercial time, but what I do want to talk about is how innovative we are. We have been around for 30 years. We're on 6 continents. We've got 12 data centers connected to 24 satellites and 57,000 miles of fiber. I'm going to talk about some of the products that we think they're still in early stages, are going to be really, really successful. So we'll talk about those a little bit more. But what people don't know is that we're owned by a company called Orange. Orange is the biggest company you've never heard of. It's formerly known as France Telecom, 150,000 employees. Orange spends $800 million annually in R&D. We have 8,000 people that are dedicated to R&D. They're ranked the 44th most innovative company in the world. And so we could not have asked for a better parent because they understand what innovation is all about and they support it. They allow us to take risks. Rather unusual for most companies, having a parent that's this large and this open to change. So that's kind of who we are. What we do, this is sort of the media value chain. We operate in virtually every aspect of it except for the storytelling piece at the beginning, the writing of the stories. But we'll do on-site production, we'll pull in the contribution. President Trump's visit to Vietnam we handled that. We brought back the content from Vietnam when that occurred. We bring it all the way through, content manage it, and we distribute it to where it goes. So these are the kinds of things that we've been doing for the last 30 years. And interestingly, we are signing up sort of Silicon Valley customers that are moving into the media arena. They're using the services that, I don't want to call them legacy, but probably the best way to describe them. They're using the legacy services that we're providing because they don't have that capability themselves. The services that I just talked about before are meant to reduce cost for our customers. So our customers outsource to Globecast because we can do it with higher quality and for less money. What we've done is, with Orange's support in the last couple of years, is move into endeavors that make our customers money. We have moved into the revenue side of the equation. So, there's a few things here under our Globecast Digital Media Hub, but one of the areas that you might find of interest is our content marketplace, in which we're enabling our customers, our content creators, to put their content out there in the marketplace, and we make it very, very easy for them to acquire and purchase that content. Ultimately, we'd like to get to sort of a trading floor of content, but we're not quite there yet, but we're moving down that path. And then finally, I don't know if any of you have sort of read about our announcement recently. We just announced a relationship that we have with an organization called SnifferCat. So what SnifferCat and we together are trying to address is the AVOD market. And so we're all acronym compliant. AVOD means advertising-based video on demand. So basically, it's free channel, you don't have to pay a fee, and it's supported through advertising. It's a $20 billion market today. It's expected in the next 3 or 4 years to grow to over $40 billion. So a pretty big market. And SnifferCat has some really interesting technology around automating a lot of the pieces of an AVOD type of solution, which I'm going to talk about here really quickly. The problem that we're trying to solve is, in the AVOD market, a lot of the brains, a lot of the technology is in the device, the mobile device. So you're playing the video on something called a player on this mobile device, and that device manages the commercials that are inserted into the video. And for everyone using that device on a particular channel, they're basically getting the same commercial. The problem with that is the data. More and more today, data has become so valuable and so important. What are people watching it? When are they watching it? And that is, I don't want to say lost, but it's fragmented when people are using their device. It's device-based. So what we and SnifferCat have moved towards is something called server-side dynamic ad insertion. That is, pulling away from the device itself and putting the logic up in the cloud. So here is where the device is and where traditional, let's say, dynamic ad insertion or inserting ads takes place. We've moved that to the cloud, and what that allows us to do, amongst other things, is suck in all of that valuable data on what customers are doing, and it allows us to use that data to more precisely and directly deliver an ad for a specific customer based upon an IP address. This is incredibly valuable to an advertiser who wants to reach the right audience. So what I would love for you to do, if you're interested, is to come by our booth, the Globecast booth, which is sort of right over here. We've got some demonstrations that we can provide you about that new product, but it's just sort of indicative of what I've seen with this company, is that they're leaning forward and taking risks. And I think this is a really nice risk to take. So that's it, I think. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? No? All right. Well, I thank you for your attention. Have a great show.